Welcome to the first real panel, or large panel rather, I should probably say. And I want to welcome our panelists as well, very briefly, and introduce them, even though you probably see them on the screen. And by the way, detailed bios are available. First, Aslin, I do that in alphabetical order, which happens to be left from right, or for the viewers, right to left. Aslin Unlusoy, and she is the Counsellor in Science, Technology and Innovation, Mission of Canada to the EU, and she's based in Brussels. Welcome, thank you for joining us. And we have Carole Mancel-Blanchard, who is Head of Unit, DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission, also based in Brussels. Welcome, Carole. And last but not least, we have Yves Joannette, who is the Vice President of Research at the Université de Montréal. Is that fair? Excellent. So, look forward. Oh, my name is John Metselaar, by the way. I do research, I do innovation and transformation work for the Conference Board after having been retired from Procter & Gamble after 30 years of working over there. Pleasure to be with you. But let's go and get over to the panelists because they know what they're talking about. I'm here to ask questions. It's a wonderful position, and we're looking for answers. So let us go and get grounded. We mentioned, it was already mentioned, Horizon Europe. What we talked in our pre-conversation is not everybody knows what Horizon is. Some of you are very versed and some less. So why don't we start with what is Horizon Europe before we even move into the Canada question. So maybe Carole, you are in the best place to go and give us a little bit of an introduction on getting us grounded on what Horizon Europe is.
Yes, thank you very much. Horizon Europe is the EU program for research and innovation. So to give you an order of magnitude, member states, so the 27 member states give to the EU budget some funding. It represents the EU budget 1% of the EU GDP. And this budget is spent 2/3 for cohesion and agriculture and 1/3 for the rest. And out of the rest is this program, Horizon Europe, financed with 93.5 billion euro over 7 years. It's a program built on 3 pillars. One pillar is about excellence research. It's about mobility of researchers, staff exchanges, fellowships. The second pillar is in order to help us all finance solutions to global challenges. So it's based, it's divided in 6, we call it clusters, 6 big areas of activity. And the third pillar is innovation. And as I said, 93 billion euro is allocated to this program, around 60 billion to Pillar 2, and Canada is associated to Pillar 2. So in a nutshell, this is the biggest multilateral cooperation program in research and innovation in the world, open to international cooperation with from third countries, participants. Everyone in the world can participate in the program, so they need to apply, and they can apply any research entity, any company. But there's a special status granted to certain countries which are associated to the program. And 19 countries are associated to the program so far. Association to the program means that associated countries bring money to the program, so they fund the program. And in return, their entities can participate in the program like any entity of any EU member states. So they have the same status, the same rights to participate in the program like EU member states entities. It means that the Canadians can lead consortia because lots of the projects under this Pillar 2 global challenges are implemented by research consortia of several partners. And Canadians, because Canada is associated to the program, can now lead consortia, not only take part of consortia led by an EU member state, but also lead consortia. And another important element of the participation of the association of Canada to the program is that Canada is participating in the governance of the program in the governance structures as an observer, but as an active observer. I mean, so the table is enlarged to associated countries, and these associated countries, including Canada, they have their say, they can share their views on the future areas for cooperation. So we are working with work programs, we call it, which are programs launching announcing the different areas under which there will be call for projects, call for proposals launched during the next year or next 2 years. And there will be 2 of these programs still to come, one in April next year for 2025, and one by the end of 2025 covering 2026 and 2027. So this is where Canadian entities have to look at in order to look at the opportunities to participate in the program.
And now we know what we're talking about. That was excellent. With no slides and explaining it very, very clearly. Thank you, Carole. And let's move then into Aslin and your view on the role of Canada in Horizon.
Thank you. Well, just maybe to put a little bit of context, Canada has been participating in Horizon Europe, or the versions of the programs, since the very beginning, since the 1980s. 1984 is when we started. And we've had very good and very strong participation. Sorry, I'm hearing an echo. Sure. Yeah, okay. So we've had a very strong participation ongoing, and then in the very last framework program, so these groupings of Horizon Europe, they're known as framework programs. So sorry, there's a lot of terminology. But in the previous framework program, we were the 3rd largest participant for those outside of the continent. So when the Commission offered association, which is another form of membership to us, we were very excited. To sort of recap what Carole had said, the main difference is that the Canadians, when they're successful in a call, they don't have to look elsewhere to get the funding. It is given from the Commission, and then the Government of Canada later on pays the bill. That's how it works. And so what this means for Canada is that it just plays onto our partnership. We've had a long history of strong, close collaboration in trade and in innovation overall. We've had formal agreements since the 1950s, but it was mostly a flow of information and people, but there weren't any dedicated funds. So when we had the opportunity to be a member in Horizon Europe, then it just opened up the doors. So association membership for Pillar 2 in Canadian dollar terms roughly would mean that you're going after project calls worth 10 billion Canadian dollars a year. Let that sink for a second. And within that, about 35% is dedicated to climate change mitigation. When you think about the types of projects, the clusters, the themes that are done or that are presented, they're labeled as global challenges, but it is done with an EU lens, but many of their interests are our interests. So we have a lot of shared priorities and interests. So one of the things that I always wish to emphasize with people is that this is the program to be able to go into where you don't have any pitfalls or anything. The door is wide open. And many of the Europeans wish to collaborate with Canadians. If you think about it, 7 of our top 10 research collaborators are on the continent, and that includes France, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, and so on. So this is just a natural transition. I find one of the challenges for Canadians is actually understanding the program and wanting to know how to get in, how to get involved. So if I may, I'm just curious, how many of the people in the room have actually pursued a project call in Horizon Europe? Okay. I've created a series of tools, guide, support documents, first steps from A to Z. If you wish, for all those that are interested at the end of the presentation, please leave me your business card or leave it in the corner with the letter D on it, and I know to add you to the distribution list. So I'll stop there so we could have the conversation go and I could talk more about Canadian participation.
Well, this was a nice compliment with an E. Well done, thank you. And maybe Yves, and also compliment with an I. Yves, from your side, from your view and experience as well around Horizon, sitting in Canada and at the university, what's your take? What's been your experience?
Well, first of all, thanks to Carole for the descriptions of the program and to Aslin for mentioning that Canada, the researchers, the academics already have lots of collaboration with Europeans. As a researcher, I did my postdoc in Europe, in Marseille, many decades ago. But this is a natural collaboration. However, totally, as Aslin just mentioned, we were not in a position where it was simple to collaborate because we had to find some extra money. For instance, I personally had a FP5, FP6 membership into a program, which I had to find some finance in my Quebec government in order to support me. But it was very useful. Now, to have this is fantastic. However, and Aslin already probably said one of the major challenges is the fact that we have signed 6 months ago, or more or less. European colleagues have 40 years of culture of the different framework program. So we have to put this culture in place. In fact, in my university, we started a year and a half ago to make webinars in order to explain what is a consortium, how it's composed with its different components called work packages, and so on and so on. And currently, even though Canadians are able to be the leaders of a consortium, we are just telling them, well, be a member of it for a couple of maybe months or years, and then we'll learn a little bit more how to do it. But I think that this comes at a point in time which is absolutely most relevant. And I think even the pandemic has helped what I'm going to say, is that more and more the universities are not isolated from industry. They're more and more connected. And Horizon Europe could be a good point in time for Canada-Europe relationship between academia and industry, whether industry from Canada, from Europe, with which we have already connections. And I'll just finish mentioning that, for instance, in Canada, there's more and more of those support for academics to work with industry, not in a univectorial way. Namely, it's not because the academic knows the thing and then they want the industry to maybe innovate and do something, but in both ways, listening to the needs of industry. For instance, I happen to be in charge of the Eastern Canada Pandemic Preparedness Hub, which is similar a little bit to the HERA in European Union. And this is, the governance is half academic, half industry, and we're working together to be better prepared. So this is an example, and I think it's going to be useful for the Horizon Europe
Wonderful.
Opportunities.
Wonderful. So moving along and tagging on to what you just said, it's clear that it's a very young program, so we all need to learn. It's also clear, I think, it's becoming clear that academia is ahead of business in terms of stepping in. Right. So what is it that we need to do to get more of the Canadian businesses, in particular, into Horizon 2020, into the Horizon program? And maybe Aslin, you had some points of view on that in our pre-call. So.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's just building your awareness and understanding. Because when I do my many presentations, the short of it is what I tell Canadian businesses is that if you want to further innovate, and who doesn't, but if you want to have the chance to further innovate on something big and be connected to potential future clients, partners, and markets, then it becomes a no-brainer. The second pillar is separated into 6 clusters, have different themes, but the themes run the gamut. So if you're talking about digital, space, industry, cross-cutting AI, health, food, oceans, you name it, it's there. You're innovating, it's best to look at the project calls. The one thing, though, is that you'd have to be aware of the timing and the effort. But there are a lot of resources. As an initial step, what I strongly encourage businesses to do is just to reach out to a strong European partner and say that, hey, for the next set of calls that come out, can we collaborate? When people talk about consortiums are a group of chosen partners. A typical project call would have 8 to 12 partners. So I have some businesses call me and say, listen, I'm interested, but I don't know if I could do everything. And I always say, you don't have to do everything. You just bring your expertise, your thoughts, your innovation to the project. Just play to your strengths and let the partners that you choose to be with play to their strengths. Like some people, part of the consortia is someone who raises their hand and says, I'll play coordinator. And it's like, brilliant, done. So just find the people that you could connect with, people that you've already connected with. And if not, be on my distribution list. I'll set you up with some of my partnering events, where the last one I had 580 people register. And then you'll have the chance to not only pitch your capabilities, but find new potential partners to go after these calls, where on average, these calls are worth anywhere from $4 to $10 million. But I've seen some go to 20 million. And lastly, one good success story was the precursor to 4G, where they ended up having, I think, 20 or 40 partners and going after $100 million worth in grants.
Thank you. How about you, Carole? Yves, who wants to go next on this topic?
Well, I think Aslin stressed the most important thing. So it's necessary that the Canadian authorities explain the possibilities offered by the program, that also the business community is aware of the possibilities for cooperating under the program. There are already now, since 2021, more than 100,000 SMEs participating in Horizon Europe, mainly in Cluster 4 and Cluster 5. So Cluster 4 is digital industry and space, and Cluster 5 is climate, energy, and mobility. So this means there are lots of opportunities, and what I would like to stress is that 1 out of 4 of the application of SMEs has been successful. So there's a high success rate for companies willing to take part of consortia in the program.
Cool. Yves?
Yeah, just of course, we'll have to better disseminate this possibility to our colleagues from industry and universities. It's already being done, but industry a little bit less. And so this will be done. This will have to be done. On the other side, industry and colleagues in Europe have to understand what is the complementary strength of potential Canadian contribution, and for instance, a word that is in nearly every 2 pages of the calls is AI, so artificial intelligence. Well, as you might know, Canada is a leader in AI. And not only AI as it is, AI as it will be. So, for instance, one of my colleagues at Université de Montréal, Joshua Benjo, he's one of the 3 inventors of current AI, has now, and we have received immense support from the CFREF program from Canada, Apogée called in French, which with the partners ends up to be more than $500 million to develop the next generation of the AI, the more robust one, the one that will be more applicable into all aspects, the more reasonable and the more responsible one. So this is important. And there's also transversal, what I call Canadians are good in some transversal topics. For instance, the participation of citizens participation, which is important, I think, for Horizon Europe. And this is something that is a complementary thing that we could bring to SMEs, to academic from Europe. So this has to be taken in mind. Just to tell you, in my university in Montréal, we have the Faculty of Medicine, we have a unit, a department, which is the citizen patient department, headed by a citizen who's a professor. So it means how this is really important for us. So I think in both sides, we have always to be on both sides in order to enhance this collaboration, for which I think we have full potential.
It all starts with getting needs clear, right? And seeing the opportunity. And I think the field of AI is where the play choice as a cluster is definitely one of great interest. I convened in Amsterdam last week about 100 innovators, and AI continues to be the hottest topic in Europe. But as you said, in terms of business results, we need to look at the other side of the ocean, right? And so this could be a nice seg into that opportunity. So we talked about partnership already quite a bit. So how do you see what needs to be done in terms of building those partnerships more strongly and more effectively? What needs to be the priority to strengthen the partnerships, both regionally as well as between universities and companies? Where do you see the biggest opportunity?
if I can just comment, I think the universities and, for instance, we have my university has a Europe office here. It's to be the connector, because there's already connections between academics, there's already connections between industry, but I would say there's much more potential than there is currently. And we have to connect these people. We have to make visible what is the contribution of one side, of the other, to listen to what could be the collaboration. So there's a big period here of playing the role of connector in order to really take advantage. And also to contribute to our local, in Canada, the culture, the evolution of the culture for this, how to approach Horizon Europe, how it's made, and so on and so on. And this is not only with SMEs and academics, it's also with the head of the institution. You know, my rector, Daniel Jutras, was not aware of what exactly was Horizon Europe. We had to explain to him and so on. So it's a culture. Again, Europeans, you had 40 years of culture, we have 6 months. So,
Carole, Aslin?
For sure, it's a question. Well, I have the impression already now to repeat myself, but about promoting the opportunities offered by the program. So the universities can do that. There's a network of national contact points in each of the country participating to Horizon, including Canada, which is there to explain the program, to explain the calls and what it means concretely in terms of opportunities to cooperate with partners from across the Atlantic. Our delegation in Canada, the EU delegation, will also organize some workshops for each cluster next year. There will be a roadshow in Western and Central Canada, also organized by my colleagues from my unit and DG. There are what we call the Research and Innovation Days, which also take place online once a year, and that allow people to understand better how the program works. So there are plenty of channels, and yeah, we need to make sure that the information reaches the right persons and the best performers in their fields.
So getting the word out, driving the awareness needs to be a priority, and then indeed getting people to connect. It was a hot topic again last week. The second one after AI was how do you go and create innovation ecosystems, and identifying, both from a leadership standpoint in terms of learning to influence more instead of defining what people need to do becomes a huge priority, and at the same time make sure that within your organization you set up connecting capability. So that you build those ties. And as you said, some of the consortia are between 8 or 12 companies, right? Entities. Aslin, any perspective from your side on this topic?
Yeah, so what I would say, I love tangible, practical steps. So it's one thing to know of the wealth of opportunities and the different types of calls. And there are a lot of resources, tools, events, workshops, and so on. So I would say as a first step is truly just go into the system. Again, I have practical steps. I could share you it all. And just look for a specific call that fits within your niche, within your innovation, within your interests. Start with that one thing. And then with that, start expanding your search. See who the potential partners are, or you connect with Canada's trade commissioners to make these contacts. Like I'm one of 1,000 people that work with 10,000 clients in 160 offices. The resources are there. And then try to find those right partners and then bring that innovation forward. And once you're already into something, then you start to understand the language, the acronyms, the processes a little bit better. And then I would suggest that would be a great first step into a wealth of calls before you.
So innovation is hard work, which I've lived through many, many years. And some people, think innovation is the same as creativity. Well, obviously it's not, right? It's only 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration to go and get to the finish line. So in that process, and as you see those partnerships being built and the awareness, getting there, and the tools to be used, where do you see the challenges, the key challenges that need to be, managed and worked, that allows you to get those early ideas into the marketplace? Please.
Maybe I would say that, there are, of course, challenges, and maybe you have in mind that universities are only doing research, they don't, connect with the industry. That was when I was a young researcher. If I was referring to a connection to industry, it was like, vade retro satana, don't do that. But now things have changed immensely. And most, if not all universities, have now induced entrepreneurship programs. So for instance, in my university, we had a donation from not a small, but a big enterprise, Pierre-Carl Pelado in Quebec and Québécois. We had $40 million to create what we call Millennium Québécois, which is now has been like booming for over the last 2-3 years, inducing entrepreneurship competencies, not only for researchers that want themselves to do startups, but for all the researchers, which helps the connection with small, medium enterprise and industry. So this is very important. And here again, the culture is changing. And the culture, I think, is absolutely timely in order for to take full advantage of Horizon Europe. So I would say it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that has been addressed over the last years, not decades, years, and which comes at the right point in time to, I think, favor what we should be doing together.
Very nice, thank you. Points of views?
Well, I think that you need lots of things for innovation. You need ideas, you need a conducive environment, you need access to funding, you need prospect in terms of markets. And this is where Europe is lagging behind so far. This is widely acknowledged in lots of reports. For those of you that are following the Brussels bubbles, the LETA report came and highlighted this. Well, it's well known for since a long time. Draghi report also, so previous Italian ministers, previous head of the European Central Bank, they issued reports highlighting that this is the key weakness in Europe, innovation, and that if Europe is not fixing it, then it will just lose competitiveness and reduce, let's say, overall on the world stage. So there will be a lot to come in order to try to facilitate innovation in Europe under the next mandate of the Commission. There's an Innovation Act which is announced. You might think, okay, we are starting with the regulation, not good. But this is one element. There's a 28th regime for startups, which is envisaged. So one of the big problems for innovation in Europe is that despite the fact that we have an internal market, still there are some specificities of each member state. So the idea is to create a regulation that would be accessible to startups and that would prevail over all the national rules, so to say, making it simple. There's also the idea to facilitate access to funding for startups that will be brought to the next level during the next 5 years. So a lot will be done to try to improve. What is being done so far is and will continue is the work on the innovation ecosystem. So the contacts between universities, businesses, administrations, to make sure that the areas of in which public entities invest are they reach the critical mass, so they select certain topics and invest in these in cooperation with business and universities, so that the business is aware of these public investments. The universities provide the skills that will be needed to make this operate. And this is something which exists at regional level, at national level, and that is producing some fruits and will be even further improved.
I always cringe when I hear the word, we need to invest more in R&D, which often is like, invest more in technology development. I think where Europe is falling short is taking the technology and converting that into new value, into new business ideas.
True. That's where Europe is weak. On the other hand, you cannot stop funding fundamental research or applied research because it's a cascade thing, no? Not all of the fundamental research can give rise to innovation. You also need to invest in things that will fail. There's a big risk in funding research, and that's why also public funding of research is important to make things possible.
I totally agree, but it's not enough, right? That's what we agree on as well. Thank you. Aslin, your view on hurdles, challenges?
I'd like to focus on the positive. I love the fact that the EU is looking at ways of doing better. I love the fact that membership is now open to Canada. And so maybe I'm just being too much of an optimist, but it would be brilliant if we just further encouraged the cooperation. Canadian participation was strong before, but it could be exceptionally strong now that people fully are aware of the program, know that the doors are wide open for Canadian innovation. And then with that, hopefully, collectively, also find ways for that innovation to also translate to eventual commercialization. So not that we're always, like on the Canadian side, selling our great ideas to our cousins down south of the border. Lost my train of thought. But ultimately, there's a lot more that we can do together. And then even in the lead up to the signing of the agreement between Canada and the EU for Horizon Europe, I can't stress the number of European counterparts that came to me to say, when will this happen? We're too excited for it to happen. We want to do more with Canada. And still on one-off basis, we're having these approaches to see what more we could do with the partnering event. So all I could say is that at least on the Canadian side for innovation, here in Europe, the doors are truly wide open, and all you have to do is step in, and then hopefully then that's just going to improve the situation for us all. Last thing I'll say is one thing that I believe will be really great that Carole and I had discussed before is that there's a good chance that in the next years, the way they even write the project calls might be less prescriptive. So it might be more of a certain theme, and then it would be up to you to provide a tighter proposal on how you think your innovation could bring whatever that proposal is to the next level. So it's making it more open as such will then allow for more creative thought.
Thank you so much. We started late. How long do I still have, Sam? 15 minutes? Okay, cool. Maybe at this point, let me see if there's any Q&A, and then we'll go on with some of the questions we prepared as well. But open it up for questions. See if there's any from the audience. Over there, yes, please. I see that, the lady in the middle here.
Thank you. I didn't know I was the lady in the middle. So thank you. Very interesting. I used to work on what used to be called FP3, FP4, FP5, FP6. So it's nice it's called Horizon. But I just wanted to clarify something with you. And as you've mentioned, Canadians used to always participate in these, but they had to find their own funding, which was always part of the challenge. But there were lots participating. The question I have for you still is, it used to be always pre-competitive research. Is that still the case? So particularly for industries, they shouldn't think that they're going to be able to do this very quickly because it takes a certain amount of time to go through the procedures, to be selected, the selection, and it's not to put a bémol on any of this. I think it's a wonderful program and it's great that Canadians participate. It does take some time to go through the process, takes some time to get the results, takes some time to get started, and the projects often last 3, 4, or 5 years. So it's not something that you're going to go to market with tomorrow. On the other hand, I think, and you, I hope will confirm this, that the contacts that you make in this context are extremely important and very useful on the side of what you do in the research project. So the question was really about pre-competitiveness, timing, selection. I think you said 1 in 4 now, which is much better than it used to be.
Yeah, I take this one. It remains that the projects are for pre-competitive activities. The time to grant depends on the type of actions, but it's true that it takes up to 18 months between the application and then the evaluation and the signature of the grants. So it's not for a project that you want to carry out in 6 months and get to the market with some new product or services by the end of the year. No, that's the challenge of and the interest, which is the positive side of it, of working in large consortia. So I don't know, there's this Bloom project, for instance, on how to improve the sustainable, extraction and deployment of critical raw materials, for instance. It's a consortia of 15 entities, and 3 Canadians are participating. This is large-scale projects, mostly.
Yves, you want to add something to it? Sorry, Aslin.
Thank you. And indeed, it's not like a next day kind of answer. But I just want to comment on, because you also mentioned the time it takes after for the consortium to exist, which I think can be viewed as an advantage in order to optimize the innovation. Because it's not going to be only to work on what had been taught initially, but the fact that let's say a team is working together, again, there will be both sides influences in terms of academia, industry, academia. There might be some basic and academic research that will satisfy or address some of the challenges that were not addressed initially. And so I think it's really the outcome will be optimized innovation. And that, I think, has to be taken into as a plus. But of course, a plus comes with a little bit of time.
It's a bit of falling in love with the problem. Take the time to fall in love with the problem before you jump to solutions, is what you mean, right, Yves? Aslin?
Well, I just want to say, you also have the companies like the Hydro-Quebecs and the Ballard Power Systems that go after these. And I also had a number of SMEs in space that would approach me, and when they see the project call, they know that it fits immediately within their needs and their innovation. So yes, it can take some time. On the flip side, I also got a request from a Spanish company once that literally gave me 1 week to help match them up with potential Canadian partners, because the call was closing in a week's time, and they were successful, found 2 Canadian partners. So sometimes things do happen quickly on the administrative side, if you wish, before it then goes through the rest of the pipeline. And the pipeline can be between 2 to 6 years. It just depends on what you're working on, but you'd have to be a bit patient, sure. But the way I describe it is that Canada, and again, thanks to the EU, we're now full members of their 2 largest research and innovation funding programs. So you have Horizon Europe as a top-down approach. This is how we could, let's say, improve the world. And then with the Eureka program, where it's on the industrialization bottom-up approach, I have this idea, how can I get this to commercialization with key partners? So you take the approach that works best for you.
We see there's one more question from the audience.
Thank you. My name is Tanya Hool, and I represent a company called Hatch Blue. We represent the risk capital community. So we are taking the risk when it comes to investing in new innovations, and we have a portfolio both in Canada and also in the EU. My question to the panel is, how do you also see the risk capital community also kind of make usage of the Horizon Europe program? Because for me, it sounds like a perfect match, right? We are taking a lot of the investment and the capex of these innovations to get to kind of a TRL level that are kind of in a commercial kind of a phase. And if we could also collaborate much more with the Horizon Europe, that would definitely also take down the risk and the level of investment required. So we'll love to hear the panel's perspective on that. Thank you.
Shoot, folks. Anybody? Yves is dying. Go for it.
Well, thank you, because I think there is a potential here, because we're talking about collaboration between academia with big companies. Okay, that's one thing. Then SMEs, but there's also VSMEs, very small enterprise, and there's even startups. So at that point, I think there could be, or there is a potential of collaborating and seeing what could be venture capital contribution to one of the two death valleys of the innovation of enterprises. And you refer to the TRL kind of approach. I think we're now even using the IRL, innovative level, risk level, and that I think is something important. It's also important that for the last sondage surveys that we did in our university in terms of all our students. Just by the way, we have 65,000 students. They didn't all answer, but still, the survey is that there's about 40-50%, or even a little bit more, that are interested in going into the entrepreneur kind of way. And there's a lot also interest in social entrepreneurship, which of course is a little bit different for venture capital, because it's not as easy as technical entrepreneurship, because there you have the results, the income, and so on and so on. So we're working, and we even had the conversation with the OECD colleagues, that in order to see how, in order to help the government, but also venture capital, to how to estimate the impact of social entrepreneurship, which is not the only thing, but is a very important aspect. And as you know, social entrepreneurship is not that there's no money. It's simply that the main goal is not to make money. It's to have a social impact.
Nice illustration, Yves. Thank you. Anything you want to add, or you're okay? No? Okay. Then what I'd like to do is ask each of you a closing sentence almost, or at least maybe maximum 3 sentences, because I think we're running out of time, right, Sam? Still 5 minutes? Okay, so you have a bit more time to go and answer this question, which is, you already touched on it. We see US going here, we see China going there, and we see Europe, trying to go and keep up with that, right? So how is this relationship going to help Europe to finally get out of this uncompetitiveness, I would dare to call it, versus the other regions?
I think that the fact that the program is open to international cooperation is recognition by itself that the cooperation with external partners also benefits the EU competitiveness. But it also benefits the competitiveness of the partnering entities, countries. So it's a win-win situation, this participation of third countries entities in the program. Now, Canada is contributing a bit less than 100 million over 4 years to a program of 93 billion. So without offending anyone, it is not the main contribution that will change the scope of the role of the program per se. But of course, it offers diversification of cooperation. It's a multiplier of opportunities, which is benefiting both sides. So I think we need to make the most of it. We will look at the success of the program also in terms of returns. So how much does Canada get out of its investments in this program? We will see, and I'm confident that step by step we will get there.
I guess it's also fair to say that the program is still in the infant shoes, right? And there's a lot of upside. This was the point you made as well in the pre-conversation, Yves. So, Aslin, Yves, your closing statements. How do we get more competitive in Europe?
Just do more. Like, the doors are wide open, the opportunities are there. The partners that you already have now are likely going after these calls. It's innovation. We play to our strengths. There's nothing that should be stopping you. You could do as little or as much as you want. And I can't stress enough that there are so many tools and resources out there. I mean, I could give a day-long presentation on all the details and everything that you can avail of. So just come up with a specific question, a specific ask, but first play into the program a little bit, and then the potential is limitless. And then this all feeds into our close strategic partnership with the EU. Yes, our 100 million is not going to make a big dent in a program that's worth 140 billion Canadian dollars, but it just goes to show that we're in this together, and it's just another way where we could more easily work together, especially in the interesting times that we face ahead.
This is where the Nike slogan comes in handily, right? Let's just do it. Yves, closing words for you.
Well, as it was said, I think the opportunities there are really big. But what we have to realize altogether is that on the floor, we have very similar values. And this is very important. And in order to really collaborate together, whether it's on environment or, please, I just want to remind you that we've got a public health system in Canada, which is like south of the 45th parallel, a little bit different, and so on and so on. So we have lots of values, and that's why we have natural collaboration. So the opportunity is even bigger because of those shared values.
What a nice way to end. We have shared values. Let's go and use them and leverage them and live them. Well done, folks. Panel, this is the end of the panel. Thank you for listening. And thanks, of course, to all of you, 3 of you, for, I thought, a very eloquent explanation of opportunity in particular and some of the challenge we need to work. Thank you.